Hello everyone, welcome back. I am Sachin Vaidya. Today we are going to learn about a React state. So what is state in the React? A state is an object that holds the data or information about the component. So whenever there is a change or update to this state, your UI is going to get re-rendered. Okay, let me quickly go to the code and I will create a new component called as a product class.js. Why I'm creating a new component here is, so as a state is a part of a class component. Okay, so now I will just create a class component here by using a keyword class. Then I'm going to extend the React component from the React class. Okay, so once this is done, I need to import the React component, import React from React. Okay, so once this is done, so inside that, okay, so I'm going to render, I'm going to call a render method, so which will return the JSX. Okay, I'm just creating a fragment here. Okay, so once the render method is called, okay, I have created a render method here. So inside that, so we also need to create a constructor. Okay, so constructor to call the super property. Okay, the properties of a parent class. So using a super keyword, props. Okay, so once this is done, a React component is created. I will go, okay, I will just import this inside my, okay, so before I import, what is the mandatory thing? Is to export default product class. So once the export is done, I will import it inside my app.js. This products class. Okay, if you see on the top, so product class is imported successfully here. Okay, so I'll just add something so that we can check. We'll add some content here. It's a h2 products. Yes. Okay, so my product class component is imported successfully inside my app.js. Okay, so now we will understand how the state works. To create a state, as I mentioned, state is an object. Okay, object is made up of key and a value. Okay, I'll just create a state. An initial state will be created inside the constructor. Okay, so to create that, we have this dot state equal to object. Okay, as I mentioned, object, there will be key and a value. Okay, I'll say name, initial value, it will be a blank, and I'll just mention a count. Okay, so we can add a multiple key and a values in the state. Okay, I will say initial count will be 0. Okay, so once this is done, I will say product name as a mobile here. Okay, to render that, let's create a div element here. Give a class name, products. That is, I'll create a one span. Okay, to read the value of the state. Okay, so as we read object values by its key. Okay, so this dot state is my object dot key. So I want to read the name. I'll say name dot name. If you see now here, I'm able to read the value, the name value here. Correct? Okay. So this is how we read the value from the state. Okay, by its key. So now let me create a button. I'll just create a div so that you just add a button here. Okay, I'll just add a button. This is to increment. This is for decrement. Instead of that, I will say minus Then in between we'll have a value, count values. So this dot state dot count. So this will read the count values from the state. So the increment here. Okay, so now I have just created here. I have increment, a decrement, and an increment, and in between I do have values. Okay, so let me just add one more parameter here. Price of the product. Okay, I will say price is 12. Okay, I will add little CSS to this. I will create a CSS file of product for product class. Products class dot CSS. Then first I need to import it here. I will import it. Import products class dot CSS. Okay, I have created already a class name. Let me add CSS to that. Say display type flex. Say that I need a flex direction within a column. Okay, so now if you see, yes, okay, that is updated. And I'll add a border for 1 pixel and width of 150 pixels. And we'll also padding to it. Overall padding of 10 pixels. Yes. If I want to just add some space here, I'll just add a margin. Overall margin, I'll just again add a 10 pixels. Okay, so now I have created a product. Then we have a not required. Let us go back here. Okay, so like now I have created a item in a product. Okay, so like in a product class, I just created an item called as a mobile. Okay, then we have a state. Okay, so the state has a name and a count. So now I want to update the count. Okay, like now the state values. To update the state values, we have a inbuilt method called as a set state. Using the set state, we can update the values of the state. Okay, so this set state is going to accept an object, okay, which contains the set of values to be updated. Okay, whatever values we want to set, so we are going to pass that as a parameter here. So let us see how do we do that. Okay, so let me just create a on click function for this, so that on click of the particular button we can update the values. Okay, so I'll say on click. I'll create a function here. So that is increment. Use arrow function. Okay. So now call this here this dot increment, and let us add some. Oh, so I added it to the decrement part. I'll just take off this. That is the increment. Okay, so I'll just console so that like I can check whether the on click is working or not. Increment. Okay, so go back. Let me inspect. Go to console. On click, yes, that is working perfectly. Okay, on click of the increment button, I can see the value. Okay, so value has been consoled there. So inside this, what I will do is I will update the count value now. Okay, like I will update the count value of the state. So to do that, as I mentioned, we have something called a set state. Set state is the inbuilt method. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the value. So what value? So object. okay, object with this key. So we'll say update a count with a 1 now. And let us see what happens. The time I click here, if you see the value here, right, the count value is updated. So as I mentioned, whenever the state value is updated, your component is going to get re-rendered. Okay, so your set state will implicitly call a render function again. Okay, so like it will call the render function, so your component will get updated with a new value. But now if you see now, okay, as many times I click, your value will remain same because I am passing the value here as a 1. Okay, if I want to do +1 to that, so how do we do that? Okay, so for that I need a previous value of the count. Okay, so to get a previous value, what we can do here is we can just create a function here. Okay, I'll say previous state. Okay, so like by doing this, I'm going to read the previous state values here. Okay, so once I read the previous state values, then I can just pass the object again. Okay, so let's say count. I'll pass the previous state value and let us see what happens. So when I just pass this previous state dot, let us see what happens if I just don't pass. Okay, it is throwing me the error because if you see now here, okay, so it is returning with the object. This previous state has the complete object, the state object, and I want to just get a count. I'll say dot count. So now let's clear the console. If I click on increment, the value is not getting updated because my previous state value of the count is still 0 there. Okay, what I will do is I'll just do +1 to it. Okay, so every time, so I call this function, I'll just call this. Okay, every time I click on the button, this function is being called, and what this is going to do, this dot set state, it is going to take the previous value. Okay, whatever the previous value was there in the state, then it will do +1 to that. Okay, by doing that, we can increment. Okay, so the next, similarly, I will just add it to the decrement. I can also decrement the values of the state. Say decrement, then here I'm going to do -1. And we'll just call that on click here. On click this dot decrement. Okay, so let us see now. So I can increment the values, I can decrement the values. So what is happening? Your state is getting re-rendered whenever there is a change in the state value. Your component is going to get re-rendered.